You never know your true strength until someone pulls you on the dance floor against your will, which is the equivalent of trying to get an introvert to network. Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I am in Paris and I'll be here for a little over a month. To be honest, I'm a little shocked that I was able to do this. I put it in the universe a few months ago and it wouldn't have happened unless everything aligned, which meant dropping any freelance project that had an in-office requirement and then replacing it with new work that was fully remote. Networking played a huge role in that, and I know that's something a lot of us struggle with. So in this video, I wanted to talk about networking and how I built my network because it wasn't intentional, and as an introvert, I don't like talking to other people. So this is my unofficial guide to networking as an introvert. I say this all the time to people, focus on the work. If you're someone that doesn't like to talk, then your work has to do the talking for you. I would confidently say that I have a lot of integrity behind my work. Even as I become more experienced, I still treat a simple Evite with the same design standard as I would directing a photo shoot. When you set the standard for yourself, people will notice, and if you're working in an art department, everyone else is watching subconsciously. You'll certainly build close relationships within the art department, but the real network is across other departments. I've worked for the top publishers in New York City, and a lot of those employees end up leaving with great jobs. So it's a missed opportunity if you don't build those relationships with them before they leave. This happens by impressing them with your work. When you're genuinely good at something, people notice without you having to self-promote, which helps alleviate some of those awkward interactions for those of us that have a hard time putting ourselves out there. The key is to work in a way where people think of you by simply excelling at what you do. When I first moved to New York, I got so many comments that I was too nice. Originally it came across as something negative, but over the years it became something that I just embraced. For the record, being nice is free. Being an asshole is also free, but that's for you to decide. I have two stories here. The first in 2016, I was at Time Inc., which is now Dotdash Meredith. I was going over some projects in my boss's office and a product marketing manager from another team dropped by. He was working on a branded content campaign and one of the influencers sent an unretouched photo. So he was asking if there was any way we could send it out for retouching. My boss responded that we can't because it has to be billed towards the project and there wasn't any budget. I had no idea who he was, but I asked him to wait outside and I will be with him in 10 minutes. And when I spoke to him, he explained that she was the only Black influencer in the group. He is a Black employee, which is why it was so important to him. And for me, when someone is so passionate about something, I always think, how can I help? So I said, send me the image and I will just retouch it myself. It took me 20 minutes, I sent it back, and he was so thankful. It cost me absolutely nothing to do, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Fast forward to last year, he brought me onto a freelance project with a close friend of his, and when I got on the call, he introduced me by telling that story. I completely forgot about it, and I was holding back some tears because it was just really touching that a simple gesture meant so much to him. I became his go-to for design. He has thrown thousands of dollars in projects my way simply because of that photo. I would have done it if the influencer wasn't a minority, but when it comes to diversity, I will always do my due diligence to provide that equity if the resources aren't there. This second story is about giving back to the industry. There have been so many layoffs over the years in corporate. Very fortunately, I've never been affected, but I always have empathy for those that have. These are colleagues that do good work and are being let go for reasons out of their control. I reached out to a lot of them and offered to design their resumes for free. It was my way of helping through design. And to this day, every time I see layoffs on LinkedIn, I reach out and offer the same service. I have everyone's resume, and every time they need updates, I do it, no questions asked. When I was looking for freelance last year, 3 of them reached out with projects. They all remembered that I helped them out in a moment where they needed it. For anyone that thinks that I did these things with expectation, people can feel when you're being transactional. I am also someone that doesn't need to get paid for every single design, not because of financial privilege, but I genuinely enjoy creating, and I get more fulfillment from having impact on other people's lives than I do from the projects that pay the most. If you're catching the trend from the last two segments, design should be in the forefront. We are designers, so always be designers with authenticity. Circling back to my reference at the beginning of this video, being pulled onto the dance floor against your will is absolutely petrifying. However, there are moments where I think that you should dig deep into your soul and put yourself out there. I know it is really hard for introverts, and I'm not saying that you have to do it all the time, but there are moments where it can pay off. Last December, I was waiting to check into the Delta Lounge, and I noticed that the person behind me was Jay Meyer. He was the former publisher of Travel + Leisure, so I debated, should I say hi? I can't even explain the amount of anxiety that I had because clearly I recognized him and he didn't recognize me. So with all the courage, I caught him right before the escalator and I said, hello. He's looking at me like some crazy person. Do I know you? And I'm like, no, but I know you, which is even creepier. So embarrassing. I then proceeded to name drop everyone to explain how I know him. Here I am. I used to work at Travel + Leisure to set up a tennis match between us, but I was the art director for Nancy's retirement party, Best Awards with Pam and Jill, and then I saw his face relax, which made it a little bit less awkward. We ended up talking about what we've been doing since. After the conversation, I followed up and connected with him on LinkedIn, wishing him a happy holidays, and he responded, happy holidays to you. And then a couple days later, he said, Anita's looking for a freelancer, you would be great. Literally out of nowhere, had I never said hello and been awkward, the opportunity would have never happened. Not that it was ever supposed to, but it was just a moment of serendipity that turned into opportunity, so the awkwardness was worth it. There are also moments of putting yourself out there in a larger space, which can be overwhelming, such as conferences. I went to a UX conference in 2016, and if you don't network at a conference, it's a missed opportunity, in particular if you're paying a lot of money. But me approaching anyone at this conference, absolument jamais. Regardless, I needed a way to break the ice. So what did I do? I designed some custom business cards and I put some fun facts about me on the backs of them. They are pretty cheesy, but I am a cheesy person, so at least they are authentic to who I am. First day of the conference, I forced myself to go to the networking event. I am actually an introvert that forces themselves into extroverted situations, but I still had a lot of anxiety, so I grabbed a sparkling water and stood next to a plant. Some extroverts started a conversation, as extroverts tend to do, and then a few other people joined in, which was great because they could just talk amongst themselves. By the end of the conversation, I asked if anyone had any business cards. Some did and some didn't. I didn't know which ones to give out, so I said, here's the batch, you guys can choose. Unexpected, they were so impressed with the business cards because they found one that they could relate to. The next day, people came to me asking for a business card, which was great, but also I felt seen, so that was problematic. Because of the response to the business cards, I became more intentional about which card I gave to who. What I didn't realize was that there was a card for just about every type of person at the conference. It was at a Marriott, so there was a Starbucks inside. For anyone holding a Starbucks cup, I gave them the coffee one. If someone had an accent, I gave them the bilingual card. For anyone that was remotely fit, I gave them the tennis card. If they had a unique name, especially one that's hard to pronounce, I gave them the name card, and then the rest were just for whomever. None of this was planned, but I met people at the conference because of my silly business cards. From that network, I connected with a bunch of New York startups and picked up some freelance work with the accelerators on 23rd Street. Not exactly Silicon Valley, we call it Silicon Alley. Regardless, I collected some UX work for my portfolio and the rest was history. Lesson learned, life became easy because I was cheesy. I didn't want to leave this segment out. I know some of you might be building a network from scratch. That becomes a little bit more challenging if you don't currently work in an office because that's a space where relationships naturally happen. So I want to talk to you about some things that you can do. Be prepared with your design skills. Regardless of how big or small your current network is, you have to get your design skills in a good spot before utilizing it. The end goal of networking is to find work, and if you're not prepared to do the work, it could leave a bad impression, which leads to people not recommending you in the future. Start small, join communities that interest you. Social media is fine if that's where the stakes feel manageable. I would say that going from URL to IRL will build stronger relationships. One strong connection can lead to many more, so cast a wider net without being so calculated in who you interact with. Just be kind to everyone. Bring value through design no matter how small. I know that not everyone has the time to do projects for free. I do believe that you have to give before you get, so when you connect with people, ask what do they need help with. If you come across a job that reminds you of a conversation you had with someone, send it to them. Perhaps you have a friend who's getting married, maybe you could offer to design their wedding invitation. For those of you looking for places to offer your services, park districts always need design. If you have an accountant, perhaps you can offer to design their business cards. I know a lot of you are currently designing for your church and offering your services for local businesses. All of that is wonderful. I know that it's not the most interesting work you've ever done, but hopefully you get the same fulfillment that I do when I provide that impact for others. It is also great practice for when the paid projects come. Take a design class at a college. If you're a self-taught designer, you probably haven't had the opportunity to network with the professors. By taking a class, you would provide yourself with that opportunity. And since you're paying for the class, put your best foot forward to doing your best. Two things happen when you do this. The first is that you end the class with a strong portfolio piece. The second is that you make an impression on the professor. Professors are often working designers, so if they have evidence that you are super dedicated to your craft, it builds this relationship. Perhaps they can connect you with other designers or just be a resource for guidance in the future. Go to a portfolio review. If you can find an AIGA portfolio review, I highly recommend it. It is basically a speed dating format where you can meet with designers, art directors, and creative directors and get concrete feedback on your portfolio. Again, you have to make sure that your design skills are ready to make a good impression, but this is an opportunity for you to be loud through design. Maintain your relationships. Too often people connect and then it fades. Maintaining a network is definitely an active thing, so set reminders for yourself, reach out to people. You want to treat it as an ongoing conversation, which makes your network a living and supportive community rather than a list of forgotten names. Be yourself always. The network you want are the people who appreciate you for who you are. Your circle is for long-term relationships, and that's hard to maintain if you can't be yourself. Your goal is to not fit in, but to belong. Networking is definitely not going to be the same for everyone, especially if you're an introvert, simply because we have to do things and there is a very large spectrum on what we're actually willing to do. Don't force anything, focus on your design skills, be kind, and go at your own pace on putting yourself out there. If you ever find yourself trying to hide in a corner at an event, remember that I too stood by a plant. You can do this. I'll see you next time.